Hello, my name is Jenny Thorvaldson. I'm the Chief Economist and Director of Data Development here at IMPLAN. And today I'm going to talk about contribution analysis and how it differs from impact analysis. I'm going to start by sharing my presentation and go through a few slides, and then I will hop into the IMPLAN tool and show you some things there, and then I'll hop back into the presentation to conclude. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I will start a presentation. And as I mentioned, we'll talk about impact analysis versus contribution analysis and highlight the key differences and some use cases of each. So the first thing I'm going to do is just talk about the descriptive differences. So how do we talk about them differently? How do we define them with words? And so an impact analysis in a nutshell is really what IMPLAN is probably used for most. And it involves looking at the economy-wide impacts of some sort of change to the economy. So some common examples would be a proposed project, which is something new, a change to a specific industry like a growing industry or a contraction in an industry, or a new industry coming into a region. Okay, so all of these are good examples of changes that would cause impacts in an economy. Now, in contrast, a contribution analysis is looking at the economy-wide contribution of an existing industry or set of industries. And why we call it contribution is, while it does have such a contribution includes wider quote-unquote impacts to other industries in the region, we use different language because it is an existing quote-unquote impact that it's having. So we like to have distinct terminology for that and call it a contribution. Okay, so basically the way to describe this is how much activity in the wider economy is related to or supported by the activity of the industry of interest. Looked at this or stated just differently, sort of in a way that we kind of call it hypothetical extraction way, is basically what would happen if this industry disappeared. That's sort of taking the negative view of it, which is how much activity in the wider economy would be lost if this industry did not exist. Okay, so the differences between the two aren't just semantics. It's not just about words and describing it, although we do like to use those different words to keep them distinct. There really are mathematical and very important mathematical differences, which is why we're bringing this up as a topic. It's really important to know which of the two you're modeling, because they use different techniques in IMPLAN and different calculations, and will yield different mathematical results in your analysis. So in impact analysis, the directly impacted industry will also experience indirect and induced impacts. And this is good and it's okay when you are wanting to do an impact analysis and you're trying to model something that is an impact, that is a change or something new. Let me give you a couple examples. So let's do an example of an increase. Say you are modeling the impact of an increase in the output of the bakery sector or industry. Okay, now when you model that as an impact analysis, of course you're setting it up as a direct impact in the bakeries industry. Okay, and because the bakery industry buys inputs, some of which will be locally purchased, some of those input suppliers are also going to buy bakery goods or buy goods they're going to buy as inputs something from the bakery industry. And why would that be? Well, just think of businesses going and buying donuts for their employees. or something like that, or a cake or to celebrate a birthday, or they provide, they buy cookies to celebrate some event. Now, of course, they don't buy them directly from the bakery, they buy them from a grocery store typically. But the grocery store is going to get those from a bakery, or the company could buy them directly from a bakery. I guess it could be either way, but in either, whether they buy it from a grocery store or directly from the bakery, it ultimately has an impact on the bakery sector. And therefore, therefore, that's going to be an indirect impact on the bakery industry. So again, let's say there's the example is that there's an increase in output of the bakery industry. Bakery industry buys inputs, say, from an accounting firm, and it's a local accounting firm. Well, that local accounting firm potentially buys things from a bakery for celebrating events or for whatever other reason. So there's going to be indirect impacts back on the bakery industry. Okay. In addition to that, the initial increase in output of the bakery's industry involves increased labor income paid by the bakery industry. Well, some employees are going to go out and buy baked goods, either directly from a bakery or through some retail outlet like grocery stores. Okay, so in this case of impact analysis, there are going to be indirect and induced impacts on the bakery industry, so that the total impacts on the bakery industry are going to be greater than just those direct impacts that you as the analyst put in there. And we're going to see this in IMPLAN after I describe how the mathematics work with contribution. So in a contribution analysis, the directly impacted industry will not experience any indirect or induced impacts. And that means that the total impact to that industry will equal the direct impact that you put in. There will be no feedback effects on that industry, and that's actually really good. That's how we want it. And we're going to just, and that's because since you're accounting for the entire industry's output in your direct effect, you don't want any indirect or induced impacts because you'll be overstating the impact. There shouldn't be any additional output generated by the analysis in that industry. And why? Because there can't be any more output in the industry than already exists. And you're modeling the entire output. You're modeling the entire industry. So if you had indirect and induced impacts, you would be saying, or indirect and induced results added onto that industry, then your total results would be greater than what the whole size of that current industry is, which doesn't make sense. And I find it a little clearer to look at it from that negative perspective to help explain this and why it's important that you not have indirect and induced effects on an industry that you're doing a contribution analysis for. So look at it, do that hypothetical extraction thought process and say, what would happen if this entire industry disappeared? So we're looking at negative impacts. Well, you can't lose more of an industry than currently exists in your region. So that's this last bullet point here. There cannot be more output lost in an industry than currently exists in that industry. You can't lose more than you have. And so that's why if you're putting that entire industry output in the direct effect as your analysis setup, then your total impacts can't be greater than that, because you can't have more than currently exists, and you can't lose more than currently exists when you are modeling something that isn't a change. You're not modeling growth in that industry or decline in that industry. You're modeling the entire industry. And you want to just see what other industries in the region are impacted. So you want to see, though, there can be and should be indirect and induced effects in other industries in the region. That's what you're trying to model and get a sense of the wider contribution of this one industry. You just don't want there to be any additional induced or indirect impacts on that industry that you're modeling. Okay, so let's look at these in IMPLAN and just show you how you would go about setting them up. It's very easy in IMPLAN. We have both types of analyses in IMPLAN, and it's really a matter of just choosing which analysis type you're doing and running that in IMPLAN. And IMPLAN takes care of all that for you, so you don't have to do any extra work. You just have to make sure you tell IMPLAN which type of analysis you're running. So let's look at how to set it up in IMPLAN. We'll look at the results and how they differ, and then we'll come back here for some main takeaways. So I'm gonna bring over my IMPLAN result, or excuse me, IMPLAN tool, and here I have my bakeries contribution analysis project open, and here I've created an event, and I titled it Bakeries Contribution, and I chose as my event type an industry contribution analysis. So when I choose that, that's what's telling IMPLAN, okay, you can't have any feedback effects on this same industry because we're doing industry contribution analysis. And you can do it either by setting, choosing dollar and putting in a dollar event, dollar amount here in this little radio buttons here, or you can choose the percent. And I have chosen the percent, and I've said I am running this as if I'm losing the entire bakery industry. I did choose this as Colorado, so this is in the state of Colorado. If I, in 2019 data, and I'm putting the event as 2019, so we don't have any deflators messing around with anything. Or changing our values. So I'm going to say that we're losing 100% of the industry. And when I went and ran the results, ran the analysis and looked at the results, if I go look at output, and it's going to load these for me, and when it loads, it's going to automatically sort them by the size of the impact. And so I'm going to, since mine are negative, it's going to be toward the bottom here. So I'm going to scroll down here, this industries by impact, as soon as it loads. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And that's where we're going to see that we just have one industry directly impacted. And it's of just over $1 million, and that's the total output of that industry. And you'll see that in that bread and bakery products manufacturing industry, my bakeries industry, you'll see that there aren't any indirect impacts, it's 0, and there aren't any induced, that's also 0. So the total output impact is the same as the direct output impact. The entire industry's output is there. And that's all you can lose. You can't lose more than what currently exists in the region. That doesn't make sense, okay? So that's the results of the contribution analysis. Now, if I had run that entire output amount as an impact analysis, that's what I have here. I also have my Colorado group, 2019, as before. And here I have, but this time, as my type of event, I have chosen industry output. So this is an impact analysis in this case. And I put in the net as a negative, that entire output value for the bakeries industry. Okay, and when I look at the results for this, I'm going to hop over to output results specifically. It'll just take it a moment to load. We'll scroll down to the bottom. And we're going to show you the problem about running something as an impact analysis when really you were wanting to run it as a contribution analysis. If I scroll down to the bottom, since they're sorted by size here, and more negatives were at the bottom, you'll see that the total impact, oops, excuse me, I need to change my dollar per view as to 2019 and refresh. So I apologize, there was deflation in this one. I didn't have the results set up for 2019 values. So give me a moment, it'll re-grab those for us. And we should see the number, the direct impact, look exactly the same as with our contribution analysis, because we didn't change the value for the direct. It's the same total industry output, which is that 1,112,796. So that's the same number. But here, what we notice is that we get indirect and induced effects, so that the total impact to that industry is higher than the total current output that is there. How can I lose more dollar values, more output from that industry than is currently in that industry? That's why it doesn't make sense. That's why we don't want you to run your contribution analysis as an industry analysis. And not only is that number overstated, the fact that there are additional induced and indirect and induced impacts showing up in this bakeries industry, that's going to generate additional indirect and induced impacts in other industries. So it really is overstating your impacts quite a lot and in many industries. But seeing it in this industry is where it makes most sense. Like, oh my gosh, yes, that's a problem. You can't lose more than you have. Clearly, I don't want to use impact analysis when I'm really trying to do a contribution analysis. Okay, so basically this just shows you why you want to distinguish between the two and how easy it is to set it up. All you have to do is just choose which type, whether you're looking at industry output, that's an impact, or an industry contribution analysis right here. Okay, so it's easy as that. And I wanted to point out here, while we're out of the slideshow and I'm on the internet, that in our website, support.implan.com, we have a nice lengthy article that really talks about the different impact versus contribution types, all kinds of information about them, research, how they're defined, how you talk about them, technical aspects of them. So for those of you who really want to get into it and understand it a little more fully, there is this article here on our support site. You just need to go to our support site and do a search for contribution analysis, and you'll be able to find this article. All right, let me just hop back in the presentation to re-emphasize the main takeaways, which is that the difference between an impact analysis and a contribution analysis is not merely semantical, it's actually mathematical. It actually makes a difference. If a contribution analysis is run as an impact analysis, your impact results will be overestimated. Running a contribution analysis in IMPLAN is as simple a matter as selecting the correct event type. Also, I didn't show you this, but you can run a contribution analysis on multiple industries. So one that is kind of common would be something like looking at agriculture. IMPLAN has many agricultural sectors, 19 in fact, and you could run a contribution analysis on all of those 19, and you won't get any feedback effects, any of that double counting or overstating on any of those 19 industries. You don't have to combine those industries into one. You don't have to aggregate your model or anything. You could just leave them as all separate sectors, but put them all in there and choose industry contribution analysis as the event type and put in the total output of all those industries And it's easy as that. And as I showed, you can run them as positive or negative, just depends how the numbers are going, the ultimate values are going to be the same. They're either just going to be negative or positive in your results. It just depends how you prefer to talk about it. It seems clearer to me as when we're, as an exposition, as to the differences, to look at it as negative, because sometimes to me, it seems clearer to describe it that way, but you could do it either way. And then, as I mentioned, you can get more details at support.implan.com if you want to read more about the different types of analyses. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye now. My name is Jenny